Alright, well, this is the video where I'm going to talk about the rest of the Big Ten and how they did on week one. So if you want to see the Michigan video, go and watch the last video I did because that was all about Michigan. I'm not going to talk about Michigan in this video. If you want to hear my thoughts on Michigan, go watch the other video. Subscribe to the channel. Also, I'm going to try and post these videos every week, just kind of talking about the games and mostly the Big Ten, but also other games around the country that may be exciting or I want to talk about. But we're gonna talk about week one. Talked about week 0 last week. Talked about Michigan yesterday. So this is for the rest of the Big Ten that had played this week. So starting from the first game, which was on Thursday, September 1st, Penn State on the road played Purdue. Here's the thing. Both teams looked good. Penn State, we got to give them credit. They looked good. Sean Clifford made mistakes here and there, like mistakes he shouldn't make, but he also had great plays when he needed to have great plays. Penn State was replacing a great defense, and all that, and I feel like while the defense didn't play amazing or anything, they held their own, I guess, against a very air raid, fast, high-powered Purdue offense. Purdue looked good. I really like Aiden O'Connell. I know he's been there for forever, since 2016 or something crazy. He's a sixth-year super senior, just like Sean Clifford. Both are sixth-year super seniors. And it was Aiden O'Connell's birthday. He did unfortunately lose on his birthday. So there's that. But, Penn State wins 35-31. Here's the thing that is kind of concerning if you're like a Big Ten fan. Because to me, a lot of these Big Ten teams didn't look very good. Or at least some of them didn't look very good. Obviously, a lot looked good. But some of them didn't look good at all. But Penn State, to a lot of people, at the very worst, is probably the fourth best team in the Big Ten East. At the very best, maybe the second best. But I would say they're probably the third best team in the Big Ten East, behind Michigan and Ohio State. And that doesn't bode well for the Big Ten West because, in a lot of people's eyes, and I personally believe this, Purdue is the best team in the Big Ten West right now. I know it's week one, and we haven't really sinked our teeth into this season yet, but Purdue, to me, they're the best team in the Big Ten West. They're probably, in my eyes right now, and who knows, this comment could age really horribly, but I think Purdue's going to go to the Big Ten championship. Whoever they play, they won't win. Or maybe they will. But in my eyes, I think Purdue's going to go to the Big Ten championship. And losing to the third or fourth best team in the Big Ten East, it makes you kind of worried for the Big Ten West. Now, there's one other team that you could argue is better than Purdue, and we'll talk about them in a little bit. But Penn State wins. They needed this win. This is a good first win for them, so they can move on and beat up on some nobody next week. I don't even know who they play. I'm just assuming. Minnesota beat New Mexico State 38-0. Honestly, they were favored by 36 and won by 38. So they covered the spread plus, and I didn't really watch the game. All I remember was the point spread and seeing that Minnesota was favored by 36 and shut out New Mexico State. And you know what? That's impressive. I know it's New Mexico State, but shutting out any opponent, no matter how bad they are, is always like an impressive feat. I feel like they should have scored more points, but maybe in their eyes they didn't need to. And yeah, they probably didn't need to. Those are the Thursday games. So Minnesota wins their first game of the season, whatever. Friday, there was 2 games on Friday as well. Michigan State and Western Michigan played on Friday night at 7 o'clock. Michigan State ended up winning this one 35-13. I was at work, so I couldn't watch this game, unfortunately. But Michigan State was only up, I think, 21-13 at one point, and then they kind of ran away with it in the fourth quarter. So they didn't look very good all the way through. But, Western Michigan, I don't think Western Michigan's any slouch. And I'm not saying that Michigan State's a bad football team or anything. They did have some guys they got replaced. They looked kind of sloppy for a little bit, but they, Peyton Thorne didn't have great completion-wise. He was 12 for 24 in 233 yards, but he had 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. Berger, that's the guy for Michigan State, right? For Michigan State, 16 carries, 120 yards, a touchdown. He looked really good. I don't think he's a Kenneth Walker, but he's a good replacement at running back. Michigan State just kind of ran the ball down their throat, and especially in the end, and just kind of held them on deep with their defense as well and won the game. So Michigan State wins 35-13. Not overly impressive or anything like that, but they got the job done. Indiana and Illinois. This was a close one. Illinois was, I believe at one point they were ahead. Yeah, they were ahead in the first quarter. They're up 7-3. And then after that, it was pretty darn close, kind of back and forth. Indiana ended up winning 23-20. Now, this is huge for Indiana because if you remember last year, they were absolutely horrible. Finished 2-10 in the Big Ten, or just in general, they finished 2-10. They were the worst team in the Big Ten last year. I mean, you could have said Nebraska too, but at least Nebraska, I mean, they had one more win, but at least they were winning close ones or losing close ones. Indiana was getting blown out every week. So getting a win over Illinois, I mean, Illinois is not a good football team. Let's not play around with it. Illinois is not a good football team. And their only win is a 38-6 win over Wyoming. But hey, Indiana, at this point, Indiana getting any conference win is good for the program. So they needed this win. Illinois, I don't know how to feel about it, but it doesn't matter. Neither one of these teams are good. But if you're an Indiana fan, you got to be happy for winning this one. We'll talk about Notre Dame, Ohio State last. Wisconsin also shut out their opponent. Now it was Illinois State. Wisconsin won at 38-0. Wisconsin has the tendency to shut out these lesser opponents early in the season. I don't know why. They do that a lot, it seems like. Wisconsin looked really good. I know it's only 38-0, but what do you want them to do? Score 30 more points, and it means nothing. If whether they score 38 or 58, it doesn't make a difference. They're not going to go up in the rankings because they beat Illinois State by 30 more points. So 38-0 Wisconsin. Defense looked like they were going to let up a touchdown early in the game. Illinois State was kind of in Wisconsin territory. It was looking to score first, and I think they threw a pick or had a fumble or something. Turned the ball over somehow. Wisconsin got the ball and never looked back. Graham Mertz, I'm not a huge fan of Graham Mertz, but he did all right. 14 for 16, 219 yards, a touchdown, so he did pretty good. And yeah, I mean, they just did what they had to do, honestly. There's not much to say about it. Maryland, 31-10 over Buffalo. Maryland is a team that I am more worried about. Not much more, but a little bit more than I was before the season started. Now, I don't think we're going to lose to Maryland. Could we lose to Maryland? I think the chances are more likely. But I still don't think we're going to lose to them. I mean, we're just too good. I'm talking about Michigan, by the way. We're just too good to lose to Maryland in my eyes. That's just how I feel about it. So, Maryland, they beat Buffalo 31-10, and don't let the score fool you. Buffalo scored that all in garbage time, or at least that they were down 31-7 at one point. Maryland, that very fast, high-powered Maryland offense looked really good against Buffalo. So, and Buffalo was probably one of the more tougher opponents that a Big Ten opponent played, other than Rutgers and that. So, and Ohio State clearly, but I mean Maryland. I mean, I'm worried. I worry about that offense more than anything. Defense, I'm not worried about. Defense isn't good for Maryland. I know they only allowed 10 points, but again, I mean, it's Buffalo. Now, I know Buffalo is one of the better teams that a Big Ten team has played, but I don't think Buffalo is. They're still not a good team. So yeah, moving on now. Rutgers. They had a tougher opponent, and they got the job done. Beating Boston College 22-21. Boston College was up and was winning this game for most of the game. They were up 21-15. I think last time I saw it, I didn't watch this game. But Rutgers came back and won this game 22-21 and got the job done. So good for Rutgers. That's a good win. Boston College, I mean, you can say if Boston College is a good team or not. I think they're all right, So Rutgers getting this win was important for Greg Schiano because, I mean, he just can't really be losing a lot, or else, he's going to get fired at one of these points if he doesn't, pick up that slack and start winning some important games. Hey, Nebraska won. That's cool. They beat North Dakota 38-17. I mean, Casey Thompson looked good. I really like Casey Thompson, their quarterback, so for Nebraska. So I think, he had a good game. I think, honestly, he had a good game against Northwestern. It's just Nebraska as a team made too many mistakes in that game. That lost him the game. It wasn't on Casey Thompson. So I think Casey Thompson looked good here. I know it was North Dakota, but let's be honest, every team was playing nobody this week, so let's just drop that. Whew. Iowa. Oh boy. I think Iowa, and this is how I clearly feel about Iowa. I think Iowa set football back in this game probably about 100 years. I'm about to rant here. I have never seen a more pathetic offensive performance by two teams playing at the same time against each other than this Iowa-North Dakota State, or South Dakota State game. The final score was 7-3. And get this, that 7 points Iowa scored was not a touchdown. It was a field goal and two safeties. That's how they got their 7 points. There might have been 14 or 15 punts in this game. Dropped balls, just galore. Muffed punts, I mean, just sloppy football all the way through. It was incredibly hard to watch. And absolutely pathetic. Okay, Iowa last year had a really sad offense. We all know this. But their defense won them their games. That's how they won this game. Their defense looked great. But here's the thing. It's South Dakota State. Your defense is not good enough, even though they're good. They're not good enough to beat even good teams. Okay? Just think about that. This defense is pretty much the same defense from last year. But this is the same defense that Michigan scored 42 points in the Big Ten championship. And now you can't even get a touchdown against South Dakota State? I know Iowa likes to win games by low scores, like 20-13 or 17-14, like these like low scoring, like ground and pound games, but 7-3? Come on, man. I mean, maybe if this was like Wisconsin or something. If you only allowed Wisconsin to score 3 points and you guys got 7, I'd be like, I mean, that offense is garbage, but at least the defense is, they could keep them in any game if they play like that. I mean, Wisconsin's got a really good offense. They rotate running backs in and out every year. Like it's nothing. Iowa looked so pathetic throughout this entire game. Sacks, dropped passes, inaccurate footballs by Petrus, punts, so many punts. And I felt like I had watched my 6th or 7th punt and it was still the first quarter. It's like, what am I watching? And then Kirk Ferentz wants to go to his press conference and say he's still confident in his offense. He's still confident in his guys. I'm sorry about that glare. He's still confident in his offense and his guys that they're going to get the job done. Unbelievable. I can't believe that. Like, even if you would have scored 28 points or something, 21 points, at least they would have gotten on the board. You'd still be like, okay, they only scored 21 or 28 points against South Dakota State, but their defense looked good. They did what they needed to do. They won the way they like to win. 7-3? And it's not even a touchdown? Like, that is unbelievable to me. It's not 1890. This is 2022. Iowa, you're not going to be able to win games this way. You can't. You have to score touchdowns. Your offense has to get better. But it's also this thing of like, what are they supposed to do? What is Kirk Ferentz supposed to do? I mean, this is what he has. This is his team. Really good defense. Offense that is the saddest thing you could put. I mean, you literally could have put middle schoolers out there and you wouldn't have been able to tell the difference. Just the most pathetic, like, embarrassing Big Ten team to play this week, and they won. That's the sad part. They're the most embarrassing team to me in week 1 in the Big Ten, and they still won their game. All right, I'm moving on about Iowa. That's my rant on Iowa. Good Lord. Ohio State, Notre Dame. Ohio State. I'm sorry. Ohio State and Notre Dame. This game, this was an interesting one, and I feel like I'm leaving this game with more questions than answers. The score was final score was 21-10 Ohio State. Outside of one touchdown that happened very early in the game for Notre Dame, they couldn't get anything going on offense. So, and Ohio State's defense, I mean, let's just be honest, they were garbage last year. I mean, watch that Michigan game. We ran all over them, and they couldn't do anything about it. This year, Ohio State's defense looks legitimately like scary good. Like they looked. If Notre Dame's offense is as good as people are saying they are, that offensive line that's apparently ranked number 2, that offensive line that's ranked number 2 in the country, going into this year, they certainly didn't look like it. But if that's true, then Ohio State's defense drastically improved. And that is a scary defense right there, if that's the case. Offense, I mean, CJ Stroud, he looked okay. He was 24 for 34, 223 yards, a couple of touchdowns. But he wasn't putting up those crazy numbers he usually does. Now, on the flip side of that argument, you could probably say Notre Dame's defense. Is their defense really that good? Outside of the fourth quarter, they looked really dominant. Was stopping Ohio State's apparently really high-powered and super talented offense that's supposed to be the best in the country. Like, I don't know. So, is Ohio State and Notre Dame's defenses the strong parts of this team, and their offenses are the weak parts? Like, is it the complete opposite of what we thought? That's the big question for me. Now, where do these teams go from here? Now, Ohio State, I'm still convinced Ohio State's one of the best teams in the country. They didn't look like it on offense, but on defense, I mean, if their defense, like I said, if Notre Dame's offense is as good as everyone's saying they are, and Ohio State's defense plays like that in every game, they're gonna win every game. No doubt, they're gonna win every game. So I don't know. It's hard to say. But now Marcus Freeman is 0-2 at Notre Dame now. I don't know. Has a Notre Dame head coach ever started 0-2? I don't know. But here's the thing. Notre Dame, on an average year, if they lose even one game, and I'm just saying, it doesn't matter who it is. If they lose one game, they're out of the playoffs on the average year. When was the last time Notre Dame made the playoffs and wasn't undefeated? It hasn't happened. It hasn't happened. And the big reason for that is Notre Dame doesn't play in a conference. They elect not to play in a 13th game. So, other than the 2020 year where they were in the ACC title game against Clemson and got blown out, they don't play a 13th game unless they're in the playoffs or they're playing a bowl game. They don't play a conference title game. So if with Notre Dame, but I think this year's a little bit different, and I think even with an 11-point loss to Ohio State, I think this still works in Notre Dame's favor in a couple of ways. Number one, it's early in the season, very early. It's the first week of the season. If you're going to lose a game, this is the best time to do it because you're going to look a lot better losing your first game and winning 11 in a row than winning 11 in a row and losing your last game. You just are. And it could be the same exact team. I mean, Notre Dame's going to look better by the end of the season if they win 11 games in a row, finish 11-1 with their only loss being the season opener against Ohio State. But if Michigan starts 11-0 and then loses to Ohio State by pretty much the same score, Michigan looks worse. because it's at the end of the season. It's like the worst time to lose. That's how I feel. But I think this year works a little bit different in the way that it is early in the season. We really don't know how good Ohio State is yet, but if Ohio State ends up still being one of the best teams in the country and making the playoffs, and Notre Dame wins out, including a good win over Clemson, you could make an argument that Notre Dame belongs in the playoffs, even with an 11-1 record. Now, if they lose to Clemson or lose any other game, USC or whatever, they're done. They have to win out. They have to win out to make it to the playoffs. And even then, I'm not sure. Some things would have to work out in their favor. So, Notre Dame, they're going to have to win the rest of their games and just kind of hope things work out for them to make it, in my eyes. I'm not saying that their chances are impossible, but since Notre Dame doesn't play in a conference, their chances of making it in is drastically lower than when they have 0 losses. So that's how I feel about Notre Dame. And a little bit more about Notre Dame. How good is this offense? I mean, they're saying second best offensive line in the country behind Michigan. They didn't show that. They didn't show that at all. Their defense looked like the best part of the team. Ohio State, on the flip side, was pretty much the same thing. I mean, their offense didn't look bad by any means, but they just didn't look how we thought they were going to look. They didn't look high-powered and was going to look like a team that was going to score 40, 50 points. I mean, they just didn't do it. Now, maybe Notre Dame's defense is just that good. Who knows? We're going to have to keep watching to see how this season goes, and how these teams improve over time, and if Notre Dame gets any better, or if Ohio State gets any better. Well, in my eyes, I think these two teams are going to win the vast majority of their games. Ohio State should win all of their games, or at least they're predicted to. Who knows? I mean, if they play like this every week, they may not. Notre Dame, on the flip side, if their offensive line looks like that every week, they may struggle. So it's really just going to be for Notre Dame, it's really just going to be about, is their defense as good as they really looked in this Ohio State game, or is Ohio State's offense just not as good as we thought they were going to be? And is Notre Dame's offense always going to look like this, or are they having growing pains? Like, there's lots of questions that still, by the time this game was over and we hit triple zeros, I was like, man, I don't know how to feel about these teams. I just don't know. I was expecting to go in this game and have a really close game that both teams are going to score 40 points. At least 40 points, 45, 35, something like that in Ohio State's favor. I had Ohio State winning, but if something like that would have happened, then you'd know. You'd be like, okay, so Ohio State's and Notre Dame's defenses struggled because their offenses on both sides of the ball are so freaking good. But we didn't see that. So, I mean, man, the score was 10-7 at halftime in Notre Dame's favor. So, I don't know, man. We'll see. We'll see how these teams look going forward. They play some nobodies next week, so we'll see how they look in the coming weeks, and when Ohio State gets into conference play and Notre Dame plays tougher opponents like USC and Clemson and stuff like that. But yeah, that was pretty much just that. That was the entire Big Ten. Any other games? Clemson, Georgia Tech is technically today, but I'm filming this at like 3:30 in the morning, on Monday, so Labor Day. So, what other teams? What would I say are the best teams so far this year. What are the teams that look the best this year? Alabama. Clearly. I mean, 55-0 to Utah State. Like I said before, it doesn't matter what the team is. Shutting out any opponent is impressive. 55-0 Utah State. They could have made it 85-0, but there's no need for that. Georgia. Whew. Now a lot of people are gonna say not Georgia. Oregon is overrated, and that's fine. You can think that. Georgia is, after this week, one of the best two teams in the country. I would make the argument they are the best team in the country. Again. Like I said, you can argue forever that Oregon is overrated. They're nothing, whatever. Georgia, they did whatever they wanted. Georgia is one of the best teams in the country, in my eyes. As of right now, they are your national champions come January. They looked the best. 49-3 over Oregon. They looked the best out of any team this week. Just my opinion. Even better than Bama. Like I said, Bama looked really good too. Shutting out an opponent, no matter who it is impressive. But they played a lot weaker of an opponent, so it's a little bit harder to judge. But yeah, Alabama, Georgia, I mean, two SEC schools, clearly the best teams right now. Florida looked really good. They beat Utah. Utah was a top 10 team in every poll you looked at. Utah was in the top 10. So Florida getting a 29-26 win over Utah. Florida looks really good. Michigan 51-7 over Colorado State. We've already talked about that. My Wolverines look dominant. Oklahoma looks really good. Baylor looks really good. Oklahoma beat UTEP 45-13. Baylor beat Albany 69-10. Nice. USC looked really good. I know these teams didn't play anybody, but USC looked really good. 66-14 over Rice. Miami beat Bethune-Cookman 70-13. Wisconsin looked really good. And yeah, I mean, what teams looked really bad though? That's the question. That is the question of the day. Who looked the worst? Well, Utah. They were the biggest, in my eyes, the biggest losers of the week. I mean, it's not like they looked all bad, but losing to Florida, come on, man. You're a top 10 team, you shouldn't be losing to an unranked opponent, even in week 1. NC State almost lost to East Carolina, only beat them by 1, and the only reason they didn't was because East Carolina missed an extra point. NC State literally survives by a hair. NC State does not look good. Being 13th ranked and almost losing to East Carolina. They didn't look good. They did win, but they didn't look good. Cincinnati didn't look good. I should say Arkansas looked really good, but Cincinnati didn't look good. That was a good game too. Let's see. Anyone else? Oh, Iowa. Iowa looked like garbage. I've already talked about that. I went on and on about that one. Oregon didn't look good. Oregon looked like garbage. I know they're playing Georgia, but come on, man. Not even a touchdown against Georgia. I know Georgia's known to not let any touchdowns go, but come on, man. All right. And who are your Heisman candidates? Bryce Young, Stetson Bennett. That's about it right now. I guess it's a two-way between those two guys, but if I had to give a definitive, it's Bryce Young. Again, it's still early, so we'll see how the season goes. And this Heisman candidacy could be completely different a month from now. So we'll see how it looks, fan. Talk about it a little bit more because it's kind of early to tell right now. But yeah, that's my thoughts, guys. Let me know what you guys thought about the Big Ten in general, college football week 1. Subscribe to the channel. I'm gonna make these videos every week, or at least I'm gonna try to. So see you guys in the next one.